Well, hello. We are finally here with our Rings of Power Season 2, Episode 1 review. It has been a long time coming. Short version, non-spoiler version. Just in case you don't want spoilers yet, you're waiting for the entire show to come out, you haven't got to it yet, whatever it may be. So, the acting is definitely better. The dialogue is better in some cases, maybe not all cases. The pacing is better, and it flows a lot nicer. Now I say better, but that doesn't mean great. It's just better than the first season. There is better acting across the board. There's more emotional depth to all of the characters, but it's still not great. The dialogue, as I said, it's better than the first season. It's just not great. The pacing is a whole lot better than last season, but it's not great. And it's also not as action-packed as Amazon wanted us to feel when they were talking about it at San Diego Comic-Con and other interviews and panels and stuff that the actors had. It doesn't hit the ground running kind of thing. It's better paced, but it's not action-packed right off the bat. So I will say that. However, it still has a lot of lore issues, just as much as season 1. They try to fix stuff. Like they talk about how the rings are fine, even though the order is different. But they now add in a whole bunch of other lore issues, so they kind of solve some problems but create new ones. So overall, I'd say you have like a 7 out of 10, maybe 6.5 out of 10, where I would have given season 1 at the start maybe a 5 or 5.5, and then as it continued on, it just got worse from there. So we'll see if this show at a 6.5, 7 gets better in terms of entertainment or gets worse. The lore the lore issues are really bad for me personally. So we got like 2 steps forward, but maybe like 1 step back in terms of overall quality, maybe, and enjoyment. But hopefully it gets better from here. So that's the quick, non-spoiler related review and my 2 cents on it. But now we're going to get into the actual breakdown. So, as always, spoilers ahead, if that matters to you at all. So, right off the bat, we start with... we basically start with Sauron pleading his case to the orcs, where he wants to work with them to rule the world, as Sauron does. And he's trying to convince them by saying, look, elves look at you as a disease. Men look at you as like in disgust. You're freaks, you're monsters. But if you follow me, you can get everything that you want. We can have peace in the world. And this makes the orcs uneasy to the extent of even calling him a liar. And that's something that kind of bothers me a little bit. It also confuses me as someone who has read the books and watched the movies, but has also confused a lot of people as well who have only watched the movies. Why do the orcs not want to work with Sauron? Their whole purpose was war. They were bred for war. Tolkien made them as the pure embodiment of evil. They only hate. They can't show compassion. They have no empathy. They hate everyone and want the world to burn. That is their purpose. That is their design. That is their driving force. But yet they're sitting here calling Sauron a liar when he wants peace, when he's saying that others won't accept you. And it's just weird. And I get that they're trying to add more depth to the orcs and kind of make you care about them, make them relatable, jokingly like orc lives matter too. It's not just about the good guys. Like I get that concept, but it's just weird because we see the orcs in Peter Jackson's movies. They show no compassion. They don't care about anything. They just want to fight. So to have the only remaining orcs in Middle Earth question to work with Sauron when they've, one, already worked with Sauron, and two, worked with his master before, is just weird. Especially when there's almost not a whole lot of context around it. Like, why do they hate him so much? Adar had some lines in the first season about how he saw Sauron torture them and maybe treat them unfairly or something like that. But we never actually got to see that. So the context around why the orcs hate Sauron is a little bit odd to me. So if they want to go down the route of saying that orcs can be different, they can be unique, they don't all want to work for Sauron, I would like a bit more context around that to buy into it more. Right now I'm struggling to buy into the whole concept of orcs hate Sauron. So Adar tries to calm everyone down, though, and he's like, you know what? No. We'll follow Sauron. It's fine, guys. All hail Sauron, our new Dark Lord. And he takes the crown, and Sauron kneels down to accept the crown. And then Adar decides to flip it upside down, hold it in the air, and then stab Sauron in the back. And at that point, all the orcs start trying to jump Sauron. Sauron's trying to fight back. He should realistically be able to handle this no problem. He should be able to kill all of these orcs instantly, essentially, but he cannot. He gets overwhelmed because there's just too many, I guess, and he dies. Or he dies. And by dying, he explodes into this giant ball of, like, ice. Just a big ice explosion. And this freezes the entire land. Now, if you know the world of Middle-earth and you know the map, on the very northern part of the map is a region called Forodwaith, or Forodwaith, however you want to pronounce it. I may have the pronunciation a bit off. It is the northern region of Middle-earth. It's frozen. It's all icy. It's basically uninhabitable. Drakes live there. Some other random creatures. There isn't really a civilization up there. For the most part, it's really cold up there. This has always been the case, but now they're trying to show that this area became ice because of Sauron's death. Sauron dies, he explodes, and freezes the entire region, which is massive, by the way. This isn't just like a small city, right? This is an entire region of Middle-earth that's larger than the Shire. It's larger than Bree. It's probably about the size of Mirkwood. Like, it's massive. It's a massive area that this explosion freezes, supposedly, and it instantly freezes. Instantly freezes the water, instantly freezes vegetation to the points where it's now crumbling over in ice. But somehow, every single orc and Adar himself are unscathed. No one's a frozen ice sculpture. No one's, like, arm gets frozen and falls off kind of thing. It just looks like everyone was playing in the snow. And it reminds me of when Mount Doom went off in Season 1, and there's this fiery ball of ash and lava and toxic fumes that just vaporized all of Mordor instantly, but somehow all the people were alive and were fine. It reminds me of that a little bit. But yeah, not a single orc dies to the explosion, which I thought was kind of funny. And then, so then they all walk away because they believe Sauron's dead. But, of course, he's not dead. Otherwise, there'd be no story. So we now see that Sauron's spirit, so to speak, he's now just his blood. So his blood starts trickling down the cave and into the ground, and it finds itself into a pool, and it begins to grow and fester, and then it kind of turns into like this venom black goo that consumes everything that comes near this lake. So like a rat comes by, tries to drink from the lake, it gets consumed by this black goo. Now the goo grows a little bit, so now it's like crawling out and eating insects and stuff. So it continues growing a little bit more, and now it's able to crawl out of the cave, out of the mountain, climb down the mountain, and it's now taking like bodily form a little bit, and then goes back into goo. And it gets run over by a cart. As it gets run over, it grabs onto the cart and consumes the woman driving the cart, and then now it has enough energy, so to speak, to maintain a human form, and now we have Halbrand. So Sauron at the start was an elf played by a different actor. We've now switched actors back to Halbrand. This is Charlie something. I don't remember his last name, but the same actor from the first season. And that's our Sauron's origin story, so to speak, or this version of this Halbrand origin story, I guess. The goo thing was weird. I understand the concept of like it's Amazon's take on like the embodiment of evil, I guess. I prefer the spiritual form that we see in like in the Hobbit trilogy, where Sauron is a spirit, he's a ghost, he's this black shadow that is just existing and can appear and disappear. I would have preferred something more like that. Maybe they weren't allowed to do that. I don't know, but I feel like it's not like Warner Brothers owns ghosts, so you could do a different take on a ghost. But anyways, Sauron's black goo, so now I just start thinking that, okay, so does that mean Gandalf is black goo? Or is he like white goo because he's all evil? Or I guess gray goo because he's Gandalf the Grey. So then Saruman's white goo and Radagast is brown goo, and then the two blue wizards are blue goo? I don't know. Right? Because they're all the same species, right? They're all kind of Maiar level beings. So I don't know. It looked cool, but in the context of the world, it was also kind of weird. So then Sauron is now going out and seeking revenge, of course, for his death. So he wanders out and comes across a village that is being burned. The villagers are leaving. They say orcs attacked them. So he says, "Okay, great. Well, I'm gonna go. I want my revenge against Adar, so I'm gonna go fight them." Say, "No, don't bother." This village leader approaches him and says, "It's not worth it. It's too dangerous. It's only death is there. You look like you've gone through a lot. Stick with us. Live a new life," kind of thing. Halbrand looks at this village leader and sees like a pendant on a little container, which is the same one that Galadriel sees on Halbrand when he's in jail in Numenor in season 1. And the village leader just explains that this pendant was not of him specifically, or of the king, but his family worked with the king years ago, and this is kind of like a reminder of that to him, and that how even the mightiest of kings can fall, but it's not up to fate. Everyone chooses their own fate. So trying to give like Sauron some idea of like he can be good, he can change his fortune, but also foreshadow that even the mightiest can fall, to kind of build Sauron's backstory, I guess, in that regard. So then he agrees to follow the villagers, and they're on a boat, and the boat gets attacked by a sea monster. It is at this point where Halbrand takes the crest and then uses it at part of it as his disguise for later. And then, of course, after the sea monster leaves, then this is where Halbrand and the survivors of the shipwreck come across Galadriel in the middle of the ocean, and that's how they all meet. So then from there we go to it's now Galadriel and Elrond. So The last time we saw those two was at the end of season 1, where Galadriel was saying, we can't trust Halbrand, never work with him again. So at that point, but she doesn't say why or what's wrong. Elrond then takes the rings and flees and is going to Gil-galad, going to Lindon. Galadriel follows. She wants the ring still. Elrond gets to Gil-galad after this little chase sequence and says that they can't use the rings, they're dangerous, because Galadriel says that Halbrand is bad. But she doesn't explain why. Gil-galad asks. She says, well, it's okay because he didn't touch them. Well, who is he? What are you talking about? Well, this is where she then reveals Halbrand is Sauron. And then this makes Elrond matter. This makes Gil-galad mad and confused. Like, wait, you were manipulated and controlled by him. You worked with him. You befriended him. We let him make the rings. So, and you want us to use these rings to save us? Well, no. It's fine because he didn't touch them. So that's the first line that they have to kind of explain Sauron didn't touch the rings, so they're not corrupted. Which has to be the case because in Tolkien's works, Sauron never corrupted the rings. He never corrupted the elven rings. And they use them a lot, so they have to be safe to use. Otherwise, it really messes with a whole bunch of lore. So, Elrond is just kind of more pissed off about this. He's like, no, this is dangerous to use. He's kind of like the voice of reason, which I get. Because I feel the same way. Like, no, he was there, so him corrupting the rings is pretty obvious. Like, why wouldn't he corrupt the rings? He guided Celebrimbor. Maybe he didn't physically touch them, as you say, but, like, he was there. We can't use these. Gil-galad's kind of indifferent. Galadriel says, no, it's safe to use. And then Gil-galad's like, okay, let's take the rings. Let's talk about this. Give me the rings. Elrond's like, no, and he jumps off the cliff into the ocean. I guess elves like jumping off of things going into oceans. And goes and hides. Gil-galad orders some guards to go find him. After that happens. So then we go back to Mordor, present day, and this is... So the last time we... Aside from this season, the last time we saw Halbrand in the previous season was at the very end when he arrives in Mordor. So here he arrives in Mordor and he's like willingly accepting capture, so to speak, because, well, he wants to start plotting his revenge against Adar and the orcs. Adar is sitting in a throne, and a variety of Southlanders are coming by and either pledging their allegiance to Adar and the orcs or not. If they choose not to, they die. If they choose to say yes, they're branded, and they get to go to work. It arrives it's how Halbrand's turn. Halbrand obviously doesn't choose to pledge allegiance for obvious reasons, but he says, you can't kill me because I know where Sauron is. He is not dead. And if you kill me, all information about him will be lost, and you'll never get it from me. And they're Adar and the orcs are a little hesitant about this, but they essentially choose to let him live, but as a prisoner, so they beat him up, torture him some more, and toss him in a cage. Then we get to... we go back to the Stranger and the Harfoots, and we just see that they're basically still wandering Rhûn. They haven't technically reached Rhûn yet, but that's where they're going. And they're going this way because the Stranger, aka Gandalf, not Gandalf, has dreams, and in these dreams he's seeing a staff. And this is important to him because it's a way to, like, control his magic. Every time Gandalf, not Gandalf, uses magic, which is really cool, and I love the magic that we're seeing from him, it's very dangerous and has unpredicted outcomes. But by getting this staff, he feels like he can kind of control that magic a bit more. So he just needs to find the staff. But also, while he's out here searching for his staff, he also is getting a sense of like, this is where I'm going to find my purpose, because I still don't know really who I am or why I'm here. So that's kind of the journey that him and the Harfoots are going on. They rehash some dialogue from Peter Jackson's movies of, we're lost, we've been here before, we're going in circles, just like Frodo and Sam when they were lost in Emyn Muil before they ran into Gollum. So then at that point we go back to Halbrand, who is now in a cage. They're still torturing him, beating him up, feeding him shitty food. And we see a little bit more of Sauron's magic here, which I really like. He's able to kind of commune with the wargs that are nearby. And not only does he, he gives them their food, but he also uses his dark magic to commune and, I am your master, obey me kind of thing, which was cool to see. So the wargs kind of leave him alone. Then back to Lindon, where the elves are searching for Elrond. After he jumped, they can't find him. They didn't look really hard because he's literally just sitting underneath a bridge. He's not even hiding underneath the bridge. He's literally just sitting there waiting for the elves to leave. They can't find him, so they leave. We then get to meet a new character that we did not see in Season 1. We get to meet Círdan, who is a really cool character to see, and he matches his description of the book, I think, quite well, in that he's the oldest looking elf, and he has a beard, because he's the only elf to have a beard, and it is said that this is the case because Círdan is the only elf to reach the so-called, third cycle of the elves. Elves, of course, as we all know, essentially live forever. And they have, 3 different life cycles, so to speak. So they have a, childhood or teenage combination of a life cycle that lasts, about 100 years. And then after the end of 100 years or so, they then reach their adult cycle. So this is what Galadriel is in, Elrond, Gil-galad, every single elf essentially is in this cycle for a majority of their, 99% of their life. Círdan, for whatever reason, is the only elf to reach this new, elder elf life cycle, which is why he just has a beard, and that's just the way it is. And so he's super unique in that way, and I think that's really cool to see. However, they get rid of that later, but that's not until another episode, so I'll save that for that episode. But yeah, so we see Círdan. Elrond takes refuge essentially with Círdan and explains to Círdan what's going on. And this is where Círdan has the next line that really cements that the rings are not corrupted according to him or according to this story. Where he has the line, Elrond, if everything you told me is true, then the rings are not corrupted. So it's Amazon's way of, I guess, fixing their problem with the debates and discussions about, did Sauron, why was Sauron there? He corrupted them. Are they influenced? Yada, yada, yada. So this is their way to solve that problem. Nope. With this line, we're establishing that the rings are not corrupted by Sauron, as it should be in the books, or as it should be as in the books. But for me, this creates a new problem. They solved this problem, but have created a new one. So, if Sauron didn't corrupt these rings, why did he not do that? He was there. He guided Celebrimbor. He helped Celebrimbor. He told him about using mithril as an alloy, and they talked about making it a circular shape, a ring. Um, so he was there for the process of making the ring. Why did he choose not to corrupt them then? The whole goal of these rings is to influence the rings so that he can influence the different races of Middle Earth and corrupt them and rule the world. But he chose not to corrupt these rings? So that kind of, to me, that's just like, okay, so what? I don't understand. Now Sauron just looks like an idiot in that way. But then, if that's actually not the case, and Elrond's correct, where Elrond thinks the rings are still being corrupted, then that makes Círdan and this whole line appear stupid or now Círdan's a liar. And the problem isn't actually solved, and then we're back to the same issue we had in Season 1 of, well, why did we start with the Elven Rings if we're just going to corrupt them because they're not supposed to be corrupted? And it goes back to just, if Amazon stuck to the source material and followed the events that Tolkien wrote, this wouldn't be a problem. But we have to create problems for some reason because there's not enough conflict in the Second Age, I guess, that they could use. So we're back there. Yeah. After that, Galadriel and Gil-galad find Elrond hiding out with Círdan. They try to convince him to use the rings. After Elrond has this discussion with Círdan, he's a little bit more agreeable, I guess, but he's still unsure. Círdan, though, goes out with the rings to go destroy them because he's like, I trust Elrond, I'll go destroy them. But as he's going to go do that, and to destroy them, he thinks they're basically just going to use the weight of the ocean to crush them. The deepest part of the ocean is nearby. If you drop the rings in there, then nothing will be able to ever reach them anyway, so it'll be fine. It's basically how they're going to destroy them, which is fine. It makes sense, I guess. But as he's going to do that, the power of the rings starts to speak to Círdan, and then he kind of connects with the ring and realizes, oh, we don't need to destroy these. So the rings are not being destroyed, and he's going to go back and tell everyone that it's safe to use. Back to Halbrand, who's still being tortured by Adar and the orcs. He's come up with a new plan. Don't let me go. I will go to where Sauron is in Eregion. You, Adar, build an army, come to Eregion, and then we defeat Sauron and the elves. And then you can have your victory and I can live, is essentially his plan. So Adar agrees, but only if Halbrand forces or agrees to pledge his allegiance to Adar, basically kiss my boot, and we have an agreement. Of course, Halbrand reluctantly agrees to do this, but he does it. And it's also, I don't know if this has happened yet. Yes, it has. So at this point, just before this, so this was after Círdan was about to destroy the rings, but then realizes not to. Gil-galad sends messengers to Eregion to say, Celebrimbor, don't work with Halbrand. He is Sauron, obviously can't be trusted. Those messengers were sent maybe like the day before Halbrand gets released. That is important to remember for a later episode. But because one day later now, as Halbrand gets released, Halbrand now leaves Mordor to go to Eregion. So that'll be just something for you to think about before we talk about the next episode. Of Gil-galad sends messengers from Lindon to go to Eregion. One day later, Sauron leaves Mordor to go to Eregion. That's the timeline we have right now. Then, after this, the Círdan arrives with the rings, hands them out. Elrond's still unsure. Círdan's like, look, I have a ring. It's safe. It's fine. Gil-galad and Galadriel put on their rings because they're the other two that are supposed to wear the rings. And the tree that was sick starts healing and begins to glow, and everything's happy and healthy and well again. And nothing bad is happening at this point. So now the elves are safe to stay in Middle-earth. It's a little bit... It's again one of those, like, Amazon had to create conflict, I guess, because there wasn't enough that they could use. Because the whole, like, tree dying, elves... It's a representation of the elves dying, needing Mithril to heal, and Mithril becoming, or Mithril existing only because a lightning bolt hit a tree during a fight between an elf and a Balrog, and the lightning bolt struck through the tree and into the mountain and all that stuff to create Mithril. Just none of that ever happened. And so we created a problem, and we've now solved this problem. It's just weirdly unnecessary to show when none of it needed to be there in the first place. And I think that's kind of where the... Oh, no, wait, no, the episode... So I mentioned... to remember the timeline of when people left locations to get to Eregion. The episode ends with Halbrand arriving in Eregion first. So I want you to keep that in mind, because it doesn't make much sense, especially when we find out what else happened in that time in episode 2. But that is where the episode ends. So, final thoughts. A lot of unnecessary conflict that was created by Amazon artificially. The elves never needed to fight if the rings were just made in the correct order. The elves never needed to be worried about their own lives and their safety if the sickness of the tree and the origins of Mithril was ever created. This conflict between Sauron and Adar never existed and doesn't need to be there if the orcs just were want to work with Sauron. And I know that there's going to be people that say, like, oh, well, technically not all the orcs liked working for Sauron. Some of them rebelled against Sauron a couple times. And, like, I get all of that. It's just this whole, like... It's the whole calling Sauron a liar. He's not lying to them. Men do look at orcs in disgust. Elves don't like orcs either, and look at them as a disease. Dwarves don't like orcs either. Sauron's not lying. And the orcs just worked with Sauron, and before that worked with Morgoth. And they're designed for war and conflict. And they hate everything, and as I mentioned, they don't have empathy or compassion or anything like that. So it's just weird to me that with that conflict in there, it doesn't need to exist. So aside from maybe the stranger, or Gandalf, not Gandalf, the entire conflict of this episode is artificially created by Amazon because of the order that they have events and the desire to have more conflict because there wasn't enough for them to use, I guess, in the Second Age. It's just really weird. The costumes are okay, but they're still not great. The props are kind of average. every episode is $60 million. And I don't see $60 million in this episode. I just don't. I don't know where it is. The sets are either all CGI or half fake. There's no actual, like... Peter Jackson built Minas Tirith and Helm's Deep. They built miniatures of everything and combined it with art and did all these old school techniques that look good, and that's why they still hold up today. And yes, Rings of Power looks pretty... But when you freeze frame it and you really look at the details, you can tell that it just looks fake. It doesn't look realistic. I think the best set is probably the Orc camp in Mordor. That's probably the only thing that's actually fully built. And it looks good. And it looks real. But Aragian is like maybe like built in a studio kind of thing. And all of Rune is just a desert, is just a bunch of dirt in a studio with a green screen room. They never, like, none of these locations are real. So I'm confused on where all this money went. It's just weird. And then I don't understand why Amazon does this. Everyone knows where Mordor is, but for whatever reason, every time they show Mount Doom, they have to be like, Mordor. Like, we know it's Mordor. There's no other volcano in Middle Earth. There isn't. We know it's Mordor. And then they don't show the names for other locations. Like, we don't know this village that Halbrand went to after he left, after he came back to life. When Elrond and Galadriel were in their chase scene at the beginning, they didn't show us that they went to Lindon. Not that we needed it, but they didn't show it there. But right after that, they're like, volcano, Mordor. Like, yes, we know it's Mordor. Thanks, Amazon. Thank you. I didn't know. They didn't tell us that we're in Rune or where we are in Middle Earth with the Stranger and the Hobbits. They show us that it's Rune later, but that's when they technically, like, cross the border of Rune, so to speak. Which is fine, because they did it in a smarter way than just volcano Mordor. So it's just, there's a lot of things that are weird like that. Or dialogue issues where Elrond is hiding under a bridge. Not even hiding, he's literally just sitting underneath a bridge. Guards don't know where he is, so they go up to Gil-galad and they say, "Sir, we looked under every rock and under every stone. We looked across all the beaches. We could not find him. We looked everywhere." No, you didn't. All you had to do was look under a bridge and you would have found him. Actually look. Make Elrond actually hide, not just sit there. It's just weird. The quality in certain situations just looks bad, but in others it looks really good. So, I don't know. The episodes kind of get better from here, though. So when we talk about those episodes, I'll mention their good points. But it's just, you see a lot of the flaws of the show in this first episode, and it's probably why they decided to release like 3 episodes day one, because it helps hide those flaws, right? Where if this was released as its own episode and you had to wait a second week for episode 2, I don't think this episode would have performed very well, or like it would have gotten really bad reviews, because it's just, there's a lot of problems with it, but it only looks better because it's supported with the other 2 episodes. So, yeah, I guess that's kind of concludes this review. I will be posting the episode 2 review this week as well, and hopefully I'll be able to do episode 3. We do our live reviews and discussions on Saturday on Twitch, Morgamir WD on Twitch. So same channel name. So if you want to join the discussion, you can. Saturdays, 2 p.m. Mountain Time. It's a lot of fun. It's not about a oh, we're all going to come in hating it. It's just to discuss the show and our love for Middle Earth. And there's many different points of view in the show, in the discussion as well. There's people that really like it, and there's people that don't. Like myself, I don't really like it fully yet, but that's okay. It's not about attacking each other. It's about having a discussion about the world and a show. And I feel like a lot of that has gone away in society as a whole over the last few years. So come join the discussion. Even if you like the show, come in and defend it. Defend what you like. Tell us what you love about it. I'd love to hear what you love about it. But as I said, I think the season 2 is a big step up from season 1, for sure. What holds me back is the lore issues. And I know there's lore issues in Peter Jackson's movies, but I think those are separate issues. And that's stuff that we discuss on the live streams all the time. So yeah, that we'll end it here. So I thank you for watching, and hope you enjoyed. Leave a comment, have the discussion here, whether it's on TikTok or YouTube. I love having these talks, and I love talking about not just Middle Earth, but film and television. So let me know what you think, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.